Despite the delay in signing an extension into law, Americans relying on unemployment assistance will not miss a week of payments. President Trump did not sign the stimulus bill into law until this past Sunday, so they will miss. I misspoke there. A day after those benefits were set to expire, there were concerns that millions of people who are struggling wouldn't get paid for a week. But the U.S. Labor Department says it doesn't anticipate any issues and that payments will continue uninterrupted. There's a lot at stake during this rare holiday season in Congress, including increased stimulus payments. On Capitol Hill today, the Senate is set to vote on whether or not they'll override the president's veto of the defense bill. CBS News political contributor and host of the Article 1 podcast, Molly Hooper, is here with us now to talk about what we can expect. Molly, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blocked the Democrats' attempt to vote on the $2,000 stimulus checks yesterday. President Trump tweeted in part, unless Republicans have a death wish, and it is also the right thing to do, they must approve the $2,000 payments ASAP. Can you explain what Mitch McConnell is trying to accomplish here?
Well, there's a lot going on in as you said, a very rare session for the Senate, coming in post-Christmas and days before a new Congress is set to come into place. And really what's happening is President Trump is aligned with some unusual allies, including Bernie Sanders, but he also has Republican support to increase the stimulus checks from $600 to $2,000. A very similar vote to that effect passed in the House overwhelmingly this past Monday, and so the Senate, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, and Democrats, including some Republicans want to take up that bill on the Senate floor, like the House did. But Mitch McConnell is trying to protect some of the Republicans in his party who say the money is too much, the debt's too high, and the money doesn't go to the right people in terms of the limits, the income limits that you need to have to get this check. So what Mitch McConnell did was he said, what Bernie Sanders did was he said, well, we're not going to have a vote on this NDAA bill, the Defense Authorization Override, veto override, until we have a vote on the stimulus checks. So Mitch McConnell had to go back to his office and come up with some sort of legislative maneuvering, and decided to include all of Donald Trump's objections to the initial COVID relief bill, the fact that it didn't include Section 230 repeal, which is for the tech liabilities, the $2,000 stimulus checks, and a federal election review board. Mitch McConnell said, fine, I'll introduce another bill that includes all three of those items so that the Senate can vote on that, knowing full well that gives his Republicans who support the $2,000 stimulus checks sort of an out, because they can vote for the package of three that will likely not become law. And Mitch McConnell also said we'll have a straight up or down vote on that House-passed bill for just $2,000 stimulus checks. So we will see what happened. That sort of let Bernie Sanders say, okay, well, let's move forward with the defense authorization vote, which will happen later today at about 5 o'clock or a little bit after 5 o'clock, and move and create the opportunity for the full Senate to vote on those $2,000 stimulus checks, but two different versions of that $2,000 stimulus check.
Right. I mean, I feel like I'm watching a tennis match here. It's like it's in one court and then it's in the. I can't keep up with all of it.
It's like Rafa and Federer. It's like back and forth, back and forth.
I know, my head's starting to hurt. People across the country have really been talking about needing those bigger stimulus checks and that they would be popular to many people across the country. Could Mitch McConnell blocking this measure hurt Georgia Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are up for re-election next week? Or does the bundling of these three ideas help them in some way?
See, that's the tricky one, because what's unclear right now is it's Mitch McConnell. We don't really know where the votes are for this thing, whether Republicans like Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio, Kelly Loeffler, as you said, David Perdue, those Republicans up for re-election in Georgia, whether they will support both bills, and whether or not Mitch McConnell will be able to prevent enough Republicans from supporting that straight up and down, $2,000 stimulus increase. And so really it's unclear at this point, because that could very well pass the Senate and could possibly become law. But the way that Mitch McConnell has sort of, like I said, maneuvered this, it gives Republicans an out to say they voted for the $2,000 stimulus check, but then not have to vote for the straight up and down measure that would just become law. They can also vote for those other objections that President Trump has said. He called it a death wish if Republicans don't pass this, the technology liability repeal of Section 230 and this federal election review panel. And Democrats on Capitol Hill are essentially calling what Mitch McConnell did, it's essentially a poison pill for that $2,000 stimulus check vote.
So you were talking about this just a few minutes ago, but I want to go back. The Senate's set to vote today on whether or not they'll override the president's veto of the National Defense Authorization Act. On the floor yesterday, though, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for his colleagues to pass the bill, and I want to play some of that now.
So, Madam President, for the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces, failure is simply not an option. So when it's our turn in Congress to have their backs, failure is not an option either.
Do you expect Republicans to break ranks with the president and vote against him, or would that be a dangerous move?
I do. I expect them to do it because this measure, the defense authorization bill, is about $740 billion. It authorizes $740 billion worth of spending for the defense, the DOD. It increases troop pay by 3%, and there's a lot of money in there for production of arms and other items that are really important to each senator in their states, in their respective states. So this is one area that I believe a lot of Republicans will split with the president, as we saw in the House vote that happened on Monday. And I think this will be the first time in 4 years that Congress will have successfully overridden a President Trump veto. And again, you have to remember that there's a lot of money in there for the respective districts, individual states, because this is the military. You have military in every state. And this is something that the military is clamoring for and has been supporting. There's also money in there for cybersecurity. And if you recall, we've just had a massive cyber breach.
Right.
So this is one area that I believe a lot of Republicans will break with the president. But they can also say, hey, we voted for that 230 repeal because we voted for Mitch McConnell's legislative magical tricks, that he comes up with his, the package of three. So they can have that kind of out. But I do believe that they will break with the president and vote to override the veto.
Interesting. Members of Congress have been getting their COVID-19 vaccines recently, but now they've been told that some of their staffers are eligible to get the shot ahead of first responders and a lot of other people who are really at risk. Why is this happening, and how do lawmakers manage the optics of the situation? Many people saying to me, these are some people that have refused to wear masks at times. What's going on here?
Well, remember, not all members have moved forward and actually received the vaccine. It's the choice of the lawmaker to do it. But if you think about it, who's out there making these decisions that are affecting the lives of everybody in this country? It's Congress, members of Congress, and the people who are making those decisions, essentially writing the bills and doing all the legislation and making the deals, are the staffers on the ground up on Capitol Hill who are coming into work every day, and they are exposed to this terrible disease. And so, making it available to two people in each Senate and House office is one way that Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader McConnell are saying they can keep their people safe up on Capitol Hill, because these are individuals that have to be at work passing bills so that individuals across the country can get their stimulus checks, can get the money to get the vaccines distributed, to do all that kind of thing. And so I can see that there have been there's been grumbling that why should lawmakers get it, but at the same time, these are the people who are essentially paying for the distribution of vaccines. And if they can't get to work, then how does that money go out?
It makes sense. I think the optics for people sometimes is just hard
The
to.
optics are tough.
Right.
It is. Well, and you know what's interesting about that? Because I think there's a bit of an internal pull for these lawmakers. Because on the one hand, they want to be this great, they want to be a great example for people. Like, hey, look, I'm getting the vaccine.
Right.
It's safe. Right. But on the other hand, they're saying, uh-oh, should somebody else get it in my district? So there is an internal push and pull about whether they should do it.
I think, too, if you look at all the categories of essential workers that we have coming up, I think there are a lot of people who have the same push and pull that can identify. It's just the general American public looking at the calendar going, well, if I'm not going to get it until, so far down the line, it's, again, the optics. But the election to decide the next House Speaker is coming up. I want to talk to you about this before I let you go. With the Democrats' majority smaller this time around, Nancy Pelosi is going to have a tougher time keeping her position. Does she have enough votes right now? And what happens if she doesn't? I feel like we talk about this every single time, and then she somehow manages to become House Speaker. So walk me through this one.
Whew, this could be a little bit of a squeaker because she needs every single Democrat to be to be in Congress, essentially voting for her, calling out her name for Speaker of the House, or else it could be a bit of a squeaker for her. As you said, there are fewer Democrats in the House. The majority is much smaller. And so each Democratic lawmaker will count. And the way that the Speaker vote works is that, each individual member has to call out a name. And so, some people, when they vote against Speaker Pelosi, they call out somebody else's name. Colin Powell, for instance, got a few votes. John Lewis had a few votes the last go round. But basically, Speaker Pelosi is very good at counting votes, and she knows the lawmakers that need to vote for somebody other than Speaker Pelosi to lead the House. But she knows the margins, and she knows who's going to be there and who's not going to be there. I think she will pull this one out because the alternative would be a Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, because you better believe that all those Republicans who are now on the floor, 200 and some of them, will be calling out Kevin McCarthy's name. And the individual that gets a majority of the votes becomes the next Speaker of the House. It doesn't matter what party you're in. It doesn't even matter if you're a member of the House. It could be anyone. We're going to hear from Speaker Pelosi later today at 10:45, but you better believe that she is making sure that all of her lawmakers are doing what they need to do to stay healthy and well, and will be available to be on the floor during their time. The members will be voting in groups because not all members can be on the floor because of the COVID, regulations up on Capitol Hill. But you better believe she's going to get those people and her votes to the floor.
Molly Hooper, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Turning now to the latest on the 2014 shooting